Hello and welcome to the Introduction to Texture. Today we are going to talk about what texture means in artwork. We'll look at some great examples of texture in artwork, and we're going to try out some practices of texture. Now let's begin by talking about the definition, which says the actual or implied quality of a surface. So there's two different ways that you can use texture in artwork. You can make a 2D piece of artwork that implies that there's texture there, even though if you reached out and touched it, it would actually feel flat and smooth like a piece of art looks. It's a 2D piece. Or sometimes there's an actual texture to the artwork, as in a painting that has raised areas, as in a sculpture that has intentional areas where they are creating a tactile difference and including texture. Now, these two different artworks are really great examples of the different types of texture. I love this piece by Darian Medeiros. It's really cool to know that this is just a hyper-realistic painting. So they created this painting to look as though there's bubble wrap in front of that face. Now, if you reached out and touched this face or painting, it would feel flat and smooth because that's the surface of what it was painted onto. But we see our second type of texture in our second example by Jackson Pollock, and he was an artist who created actual texture by splattering these giant splats of paint onto a surface, and it created an actual raised surface texture. So this is an example where you could actually feel the difference in texture if you were to reach out and touch it. Now let's go ahead and begin this first practice together. The instructions say, look around the room and write down some of the textures that you see. So for example, as I'm looking around in our room in A3, I see the texture on the front of the lockers. That is an actual texture if I reached out and touched it. I see the bricks on the wall. But if I'm looking for the other type of texture, which I'd like for you to write in a different side, then maybe I would say the scale texture on the capital E of create. Or maybe I would look at, I don't know, I could write down macrame for the actual texture that I could reach out and touch, and that's all of the like string parts of the curtain in front of the window, or the little things that have lights in them next to the whiteboard. Now, continuing on for some textures that are implied, we could write down the texture of the table. It's kind of like speckledy and dotted. We could write down the texture of the tiny tiles. There's lots of different things. And so you can do all kinds of different lists here. They do not need to be exactly the same as mine. Now, I'm going to just go ahead and show you an example of what I'd like for you to do for these textures as you're drawing them, and then I'll give you some time. Now, I would like for you to try to draw a couple actual textures that you could reach out and feel, and a couple of implied textures where it looks like there's texture, but it's just implied. Now, for example, for the implied texture, I could draw those little fish scales that I see on the letter E in the top of the classroom, and as it works its way back, these scales start to get smaller and smaller. So I could go through and draw these scales in, and then I would come in and draw those details that we see there. So it's got like a thicker outline and then like a thinner line on the inside. So there is an implied texture, and you could draw something like that. Or for the actual texture, maybe I would steal the locker grids that's in front of the lockers. So maybe I would come in and draw the lines to help me to get the placement to be what we see in real life. So I'm just going to draw in these lines to make those little diamonds, and then I'm going to come through and I'm going to draw in the little gap, like the rounded part that we see inside. And then maybe I would go back through and fill these lines between, so that it looks like that real locker texture. So we're just gonna go through, and I suppose I could just like thicken up these lines. So those are some examples of what I would like to see for texture and the amount of detail that I am looking for. Now you are good to go ahead and try it out yourself. Hello. Today we are going to do a follow along style practice to create actual texture and turn it into implied texture. So we see some actual textures here, and what we're going to do is go through and let's go ahead and just start sketching out some of the individual rocks that we see. So I am going to actually try to follow along here, and we are just going to start adding some rocks. And I would like for you to try to pull from specific shapes to try to overlap them. But of course, this does not need to be perfect. We are just trying to spend some quality time looking at our reference rather than just trying to draw a bunch of circles, because that will not get it as accurate as if we were really trying to pull specific shapes that we see. Now we are just going to go through and fill this in, and then I'd like for you to go through this space and you are going to fill in the shadow between the rocks. And once you've done that, you are going to just add a slight amount of shading on one side of your rock so that it looks like it's actually raised. So you're just going to go through and fill in all of your rocks, and you're going to add a shadow to the, let's just say the left side if you're struggling to choose. So we're gonna add in a shadow on the left of each of these rocks, and then we are filling in the background to be black. Now go ahead and do this with me. We're just gonna go through and fill this in. It's okay if it's not exactly perfect, but we are trying to make it similar, so keep trying to draw those specific rocks that you see. They do start to get tinier as they work their way up, I've noticed. And we're just working on drawing these together, adding in the black behind and the shading on the left of each rock. All right, now we are getting close. I am going to just continue filling this in, and I'm gonna go through and add my rocks and then go through once more to add in that black spacing between them and add the shadow. This one's more of a triangle. So I'm really trying to pull specific shapes that we see here. Now I want you to take your time and try your best to actually go through and to fill it and to make it look as close to the reference photo as possible. We're trying to practice creating texture that looks real. Don't forget to add the shadow on the left-hand side. And I am starting to add in some larger rocks. I know that I told you to copy specifically, but sometimes it is a little bit too complex, so we're just gonna start adding in a few, and that's okay. It's all right if it's not exactly perfect, but we are trying to match that reference photo. All right. Now you may not be quite finished, and that's okay, but I would like for you to follow along with me, and we are going to switch into the bricks. Now let's go ahead and turn our paper, and I am going to start drawing my lines on the left so that my hand is not going to be covering up the amount of space that I need to see. Now I'm trying to make these as even and consistent as possible while keeping them nice and straight. So I'm just going to go through, draw in these lines, and I'm trying to keep it even with the side as I'm getting closer to it. All right, now we are going to go through, and I am going to start by just kind of smudging my finger over the top of these lines. And that's just gonna blur it and give me some value. And now I'm going to go through and I'm going to make my first row of bricks. Do this along with me. And then we're going to continue for our second row of bricks, but we're gonna start our first brick by drawing the line right in the middle of the brick above it. and that's how you get it to do that pattern. So we're gonna come through and we're just drawing the line for the next row of bricks so that the line is in the middle of the brick line above it. So let's go ahead and we are just filling in these different textures. All right. Now, drawing realistic textures does take a little bit of time. So know that the repetitiveness that is happening right now, while it can feel kind of tedious, is actually what makes these textures look even more realistic. On our last row here. All right, now what we're going to do next is work on the wood grain. And just like above, if you are not quite finished with your bricks, that's okay. But I'd like for you to continue on to this next one with me. Now let's go ahead and do this together. We're gonna start near the left side, and I'm gonna start by drawing this little line that kind of bumps out and then drops back in. And I'm gonna add the little ones in the corner, just like this. Now let's make the little knot in the wood. Or not, you know. I would. All right, now we are just going to start outlining some specific shapes that we see in this wood grain. So we're kind of like coming through and just drawing in some lines so that they're kind of surrounding this grain or the knot in our wood. We're just adding in these lines. Now we're gonna come through and we've got some open space right through here. So I'm gonna add just a few lines and then I'm gonna add a couple more coming down from this side. And then right through here, it kind of shifts to being a tall triangle. So I'm gonna add in this triangle, add in some of these grains. And there is some of our wood grain. Now we still need to go through and add some shading. So you can go through and just in like kind of a sketchy up and down coloring, we are going to just slightly start filling in the values that we see. And we're only shading going up and down with our pencils to help it continue to make that kind of wood grain texture. So we're filling in the gray. We're gonna fill in like the darker gray right around the knot. And then it does start to get lighter, but we still have some lines coming in. So I'm gonna still fill that space. And then it does get darker up near the top here. A little bit darker through here. And then we're just gonna add some gray to our background. And there is our wood grain. Now for this next one, we are gonna turn it to the side again. And just like before, I'd like for you to continue into this next one, even if you're not quite ready, that's okay. Now we are gonna start on the left side here, and we're just gonna make a slowly wiggling line. And then we're gonna come in and match the mountain side. So we're like making the gap and then having those little hills run into each other. Have the hills run into each other, hills run into each other. And we're just trying to slowly have these lift higher and higher. So we're just bringing those little curved lines so that they're touching. And we'll continue doing that until we have filled in this entire texture space. Whoop. You really have to pay attention so that you don't start to make errors. I just made one, that's okay. And there is our texture. Now, at this point, I would like for you to go through and you can do some perfecting in each section. In this bottom one, I'm just gonna add a little bit of shading near the top of each of these little spaces. So I'm just adding a little bit of shadow here. And then now is the time for you to go through and continue working on perfecting so that your textures really match the best that you can. All right, Now for this practice today, we are going to go through and try filling in this cylinder with texture. So we are taking this texture and making it curve around a form. Now you have the option to try either one of these, but we are actually going to work on the top one together. And if you'd like to try this bottom one, you're welcome to do that on your own as we follow through. Now I would like to have us start by doing 4 lines vertically right in the center of this cylinder. And then we're gonna switch and we're gonna do 4 lines going horizontally in the next row. Then 4 lines underneath until we make a whole column. Now, as we work our way around, we are going to slowly start switching. So we're gonna switch in this top row and we're gonna go across and then over. Now you can go ahead and fill in with your 4 lines, switching direction. And remember that we wanna switch direction for each row. Now I'm gonna come in, and for my second row, I start in that middle so I know which one to begin with. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're just filling in one, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Are you guys all counting in your heads too? Now, once we've got the front finished, we are going to go in the interior and we're going to start in the same way. We're going to start in the center, make a whole column so that we can make sure that we start in this correct way every time. Okay. And we're just switching directions of our lines. All right, now we've got our basket filled in, but what we're going to do next is wherever it shifts to being going across, so the horizontal lines, not the upward lines, we are going to give a shadow on either side of that horizontal stretch. So let's go ahead and do that just on the horizontal lines, on both sides. And this is going to make it look like it's weaving through. And it should be alternating. So make sure that you are only doing this on the ones that go across. All right, now as we work our way to the interior of our basket, let's just go across this whole stretch here and fill it in, and then we're gonna get lighter as we work our way up. And we're just covering that texture, but not completely. And then we're gonna do that same method, but we need to go a bit darker on the ones that are going across on the inside. All right, now if you finish early, you can give yourself little handles because you've got a good handle on this. All right, I'm just feeling like a bit of a basket case today. Thank you guys so much for watching.